Well, folks, Nike stock has been absolutely obliterated. That stock has been crashing like insane. Nike, one of the most famous and successful companies and brands in the entire world. The stock has fallen a record 10th straight day. Check this out. Nike stock tumbled Wednesday for the 10th straight day in a row after Foot Locker reported dismal quarterly results and consumers continue to pull back on the footwear sector. The sneaker giant's shares closed about 2.7% lower. The 10-day losing streak is the longest in Nike's history as a public company since its IPO in 1980. That is shockingly insane, okay? So what I want to do here today is I want to talk about, is Nike stock a buy? This stock just continues to get absolutely hammered. Down 10 days even in a stock market crash, to be down 10 days in a row is pretty insane. And so I thought, well, we got one of the most famous, successful companies in history here. Is this an incredible buying opportunity? Is it an okay buying opportunity? Is it actually a stay away from right now? And I want to kind of talk all this through. So if you're somebody that really enjoys diving deep into companies and kind of the fundamentals, we're going to go through financials, valuation, the business model, the moat, everything like that. You're going to enjoy today's video. So appreciate y'all joining me as always. Thanks for being subscribed. New all-time high subscribers in the history of the channel. We're approaching very close to 34,000. Somebody's going to be a 34,000th subscriber on this channel. I appreciate y'all being here as always. And if you enjoy a video like this, you're going to own the world someday. That's all I got to say to you, because these are sorts of videos that, this is for folks that are a little, let's call it, a little higher tier when it comes to their intelligence levels than the average masses out there, because not everybody's into going into company financials and business models and talking over moats and all this stuff. So if you enjoy something like this, you're doing pretty well for yourself, and you got a pretty bright future in front of yourself, okay? Alrighty, so first thing I want to talk about here is, what does Nike actually sell? Because I think people have a view of Nike and they think, okay, this is a shoe company. They sell shoes. They sell, also clothes, right? And sure, it's true, but it's not actually what Nike sells. What Nike actually sells is success. Nike sells success. And they do this, over the past, I would say 10 years or so, it's become very popular, like influencer marketing and those sorts of things. And, companies being able to, use people that are very influential to basically promote their brands, their companies, and things like that, right? Nike's understood this since the 1980s, back when they signed Jordan. And if you look at, the folks they've signed over time, right? Obviously Michael Jordan all the way back in the 80s was a huge pickup for them. Great movie. If you've never seen it, is a movie, I think it's called actually Air Jordan. It's on Amazon Prime, if I recall. Very good movie. Cristiano Ronaldo, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Osaka, Kevin Durant. I mean, you just go through these people, Rafael Nadal. And they do a phenomenal job of signing the most successful, best athletes in the world. And these folks obviously are brand ambassadors for Nike. They wear Nike. And so subliminally, whether you realize it or not, basically when you think of Nike, you think of success, because the best athletes in the world are wearing it. So it's no different than, if you ask, what is Rolex selling, right? What is Rolex selling? Well, they're selling a watch, but what are they really selling? They're selling you success. That you will feel more successful if you buy a Rolex. You'll look more successful if you buy a Rolex, right? And they built that brand for a long, long time. And so Nike's just understood the same thing that a Louis Vuitton understands, the same thing that a Rolex understands. But the difference between Nike and those guys is they sell to the masses. Whereas Louis Vuitton's like, we're going to sell the 1%. Rolex is like, we're going to try to sell the 1%, but really it's going to be the people that wish they earned the 1% that's going to buy the watches. But anyways, that's a little funny joke, okay? But in regards to Nike, it's masses. They want everybody to buy Nike. It doesn't matter if you got an income of $30K. It doesn't matter if you're a middle-class plumber making $70K. It doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire. They want everybody to wear Nike and associate Nike with success, right? And so I've even watched Nike branch out over time, right? And they've even signed folks that aren't even in relation to athletics, right? Like Drake signed a deal back in 2013 with them. He re-upped that deal, I believe it was in 2020, to, kind of get even a bigger influence in kind of what he's doing with Nike and whatnot. So they'll even look to music superstars if the brand's big enough and it once again kind of gets across the point of success, right? Now, This gives the company a massive, massive moat around the business. Because at the end of the day, if you just sell shoes, you're just selling a commodity. Like Steve Jobs even put this perfect one time. There's a very famous Steve Jobs clip from back in this was probably like 2003. So literally probably about 20 years ago. And Steve Jobs talks about Nike. And he's basically he's talking about how Nike's built one of the most successful companies in the world, selling what Steve Jobs says, he says they sell a commodity. They sell a commodity. And they built one of the most successful companies in the world selling a commodity. And it's because of the brand they built. And the reason that gives the company a pretty nice moat around it is you can't just come in and compete with Nike, because Nike's got more money than you. The most successful and influential athletes, if Nike wants them, they're going to get them because they got more money than you. It's big bank take little bank. You just can't compete with that. And so Adidas or Puma or any upstarts, they can build successful brands, they can build successful companies, but you're just not going to build Nike. That's the thing. You're not going to build Nike. You can't duplicate that. You don't have enough money. You don't have enough influence to duplicate that, right? Now, with that being said, in the short term, this is the story around Nike, right? It's a story around sales and margins and trying to get sales any way possible. And, something I noticed over the years, and I even thought about this a bit, because there was something interesting. I follow athletics pretty well in several different sports, right? And it was interesting because some years ago, I saw somebody not get signed to Nike, and it made me actually question, if Nike's still on the ball like they used to be back in the day, right? And her name's Sydney McLaughlin. And unless you follow track, you might not know who Sydney is. But Sydney's a track superstar. And she's probably not relevant most of the time unless you care about track like somebody like myself would. But when the Olympics come around, these are type of athletes you want to have signed to you, right? You want them wearing your brand because, it's a freaking Olympics. Everybody's watching that crap. And you want, when somebody sees that person cross the line first, it's pretty influential to see them wearing your brand. But the interesting thing was, and Sydney was known big in the track world and even outside the track world since she was 16 years old, because she made the Olympics at 16. And so it wasn't just like she was some under the radar person. She set all these records in college. Everybody knew Sydney McLaughlin, and she raced for also Kentucky, who Kentucky has a deal with Nike. So Nike was well aware of Sydney. But then Sydney signed with New Balance. And that made me question some things, because I was like, that's strange. Sydney signed with New Balance instead of Nike? And I thought to myself, I was like, man, does Nike really have it like that anymore? How did they let Sydney go like that? That's just crazy to me. That's somebody you got to sign. And track deals aren't even super, you want to sign a basketball player, a big name basketball player, you better have 9 figures. You're not getting a superstar basketball player for under 9 figures for a shoe deal. Crazy money. LeBron's contracts, those people are crazy. Sydney McLaughlin, you might have to give her $1 million, $2 million a year. It's nothing crazy. And so I watched them lose her. But then, this is how smart Nike is. This is how crazy smart Nike is, okay? Look at this. This is her setting the world record last year in the World Championships, right? And look what she's wearing there. Nike. So she's got New Balance shoes on. But Nike basically finesses these deals for the clothing that the American athletes wear, which is Nike. Look at her in the Olympics. What is she wearing? A Nike top and a Nike bottom. Oh my gosh. So at the end of the day, she's not even signed to Nike, but she looks like a freaking Nike athlete. And so when you see Sydney McLaughlin cross that line and set that world record, you think she's a Nike athlete because she's wearing Nike. And so this is where Nike's just on a whole other level with their influence in sports, in that, because I when I looked at that, I was like, dang, and then all of a sudden you see her in the World Championships, you see her in the Olympics, and she's Nike'd out, other than her shoes, right? But what are you going to look at more? You're going to, of course, look at the top and the bottom and the Nike symbols and everything like that. A lot of times the shoes aren't even seen. So this is where Nike is extremely, extremely smart. Do not take their, level of... They haven't become this successful for no reason. Let's just call it that, okay? Now, With that being said, Nike's had a bad past 5 years. The stock is up 19%. 19% in 5 years for Nike. That's horrible. Look at the return for Nike over time. Nike's return over the years is 6,437%. 6,437%. Speaks volumes to Nike's success over time, right? And yet their 5-year return is 19%, which is horrible. So clearly it shows you that Nike is traditionally an extremely successful company. They're just going through a bad 5-year period here, right? Now, I want to kind of dive into a few things here, okay? So first thing I want to take a look at is the financials over time, right? By the way, this is Seeking Alpha. If you want a free trial of Seeking Alpha, check out my description area down there. I actually have a way you can get a free trial from Seeking Alpha, and then if you like it, I think they give you a pretty nice discount. So check the description area down there. I think it says something like the investing software I use. If you guys want to try out that. Seeking Alpha, I like it not just for some of this stuff, but I like it for, honestly, all the articles that folks write. I love to read different people's opinions on stocks and different things like that. But look at their revenues over the years, right? So, from 2016, $32 billion, then $34 billion, 2018, $36 billion, $39 billion. Then they drop off, obviously, during Rona, which kind of expected. Then they come back, $44 billion, $46 billion, and then $51 billion this past year, right? So that's good. And if you look at kind of gross profit over time, right? 2016, about $15 billion, then $15.3, $16 billion, $17, then they dropped off to $16 billion in 2020, then up to $20 billion in gross profit, $21 billion, and then this past year, $22 billion plus dollars in gross profit, right? So clearly it's a very consistent revenue growing company, gross profit growing company with a moat around it. So these businesses, we got to understand, they're going to command a premium valuation. They just are. They should command a premium valuation. When you can consistently grow your business year in and year out, your revenues, your gross profit, and your net income, and you have a moat around your business that is just freaking almost impossible to duplicate. And why is it so hard to duplicate it? It's not just because so much money. It's because if you want to duplicate it, the problem is you're going to have to throw so much of your profits over there. Like, let's say Lululemon's like, I want to be the next Nike, okay? Or, I don't know, Hoka or whoever the company is, okay? The problem is they want to go ahead and make that decision. They could, but you're still not going to be able to compete with Nike for years to come in the future. And also, you're going to have to throw so much of your profits over to these athletes you're signing in superstars that it's going to hurt your profitability in a major way. And are you willing to sacrifice profitability every year for a long time? For a long time. To get to that scale of Nike? Well, most executives aren't around long time, right? Most executives of these companies are going to be around for 5, 10 years. They're not thinking about the next 30, 40, 50 years. Nike was able to be built because of somebody named Phil Knight, right? Phil Knight had a view of forever. And so for him, he had a view of forever, and he was able to just focus on forever rather than focus on the next quarter, the next year. And that's where it gets tough to compete, right? So clearly the financials are very, very impressive when it comes to Nike over time, right? If we go ahead and take a peek at Nike's balance sheet, very good balance sheet. They built up to $7 billion plus of cash and cash equivalents on the balance sheet. If you add up cash and short-term investments, they're well over $10 billion when it comes to that. Total current assets on the company of $25 billion. Total assets in general, $37 billion in this company. Total current liabilities is $9.2 billion. And once again, that's versus total current assets of $25 billion. So we're talking about a monumental difference there. Very, very impressive, right? And you know what else has really impressed me about Nike? This impressed me so much. I don't know if you could think of a company that has more goodwill than Nike. And yet, Nike puts their goodwill at just a joke of a number. I mean, it's literally laughable. That, to me, shows how serious of a company Nike is, that they would put their goodwill at that joke of a number. Nike's goodwill in this company is many billions of dollars, not $281 million. I mean, it is like many billions of dollars. It's in the tens of billions of dollars, in my personal opinion, their true goodwill of Nike. And to be listed as that is like I said, laughable, which is just very impressive to me. Overall, total liabilities of the company, $26 billion. So that means total stockholder equity is over $14 billion for the company. So really good balance sheet. So impressive balance sheet, impressive income statement, obviously there, right? Now, recently they have some issues, right? In terms of their latest quarter, they actually missed numbers. And on the EPS side, this is not a company that's known for missing. Usually they're beating, and many times they're beating nicely. So to miss scares a lot of people. They did beat on revenue, but to miss on EPS is a little worrisome when it comes to that, right? EPS estimates by quarter, you can kind of view these numbers here on what analysts are expecting for the company over time. Annual EPS, and we'll look at this a little deeper here in just a moment. They have them doing about 372 in the current year. That would put them at about a 27 PE based upon the current stock price and based upon what they should earn over this next year. If you look at next year, they have them doing about 438, which is about a 23. Neither of those are rich numbers. Neither of those are rich. And the reason that neither of those are rich, right, is remember, Nike, the market in general is going to trade at maybe a 20-ish forward P, 18, 20, somewhere in there is kind of what you should expect. For Nike to trade a little above that is not crazy at all. Right? Now, of course, there's a scenario that what if there's a recession, unemployment goes up, those sorts of things. Certainly that could hurt Nike a little bit in the short term, but usually those are just kind of viewed as like short-term problems, right? And sure, the stock could get hit. Maybe it goes down to $75, $55, something like that. But that would kind of be in more of like a crash scenario, right? And if you look at the company over time in terms of kind of the beat and misses here, right? So they missed last quarter, but look at this company. I mean, it's one of the most impressive just company that's just beat and beat and beat. I mean, previous to that miss, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 straight beats, and pretty substantial beats. 11 straight. So everybody's freaking out over Nike missing last quarter, and their business being in a weaker place over this next quarter or two. But the fact is, this is one of the most impressive companies out there, just bottom line, when it comes to, the job they're doing with their business model, right? Now, earnings estimates for this company, right? As far as EPS growth this year, expected to be about 15%. We'll see, and that's over the next year. Forward P on this one, once again, 27, 23 based upon next year's numbers. There's 11 analysts that actually have numbers out for the following year, so let's call it 3 years out. And they have the company doing a little over $5 then, and that would put it at about 20 times 3-year out numbers. So we'll see. In terms of revenue expectations, 5% growth this year. I don't know if they're going to actually grow the business this year. After seeing Foot Locker's numbers, I don't know. If they do any sort of growth, if Nike can grow at all this year, that's impressive. But I actually have concerns as well, if Nike can even grow this year. But does that take away from the long term with Nike? Not really, right? Nike is such an incredible company for the long term, and they're so well positioned for the long term that, you kind of got to be willing to deal with what you got to deal with in the short term, right? Now, on the stock, about a 1.34% dividend yield in relation to this, fairly low payout ratio, and especially if you're expecting the company to get more profitable in the future, they should be able to up their dividend. Even in recessionary scenarios, if they want to, they should be able to up their dividend over time, right? So when I look at Nike overall, I see a company that is a pretty good buy for the next 6 months. I think the stock could remain in a weakened period for the next 6 months. I do not think Nike is going to magically fly to the moon or something like that, or there's a magic switch that just turns everything around. I think Nike's in a bit of a pickle for at least the next few quarters. So if you're a long-term investor, usually you want to build out a position over a 6 or 12-month span. And I kind of look at Nike as like, that's kind of a perfect stock opportunity here to build out this position over the next 6, 12 months. With the stock kind of being in a weaker place, retail being in a weaker place, worries about a recession. If a recession hits, obviously that will keep the stock lower for longer, right? And that could give you even maybe out to like an 18-month kind of buy time to just kind of stuff money in this stock as a very high-quality company that's, they've weathered plenty of recessions. This company's been around since the 80s. Like, they've weathered plenty of recessions over time, right? I think even prior to the 80s. But they've weathered plenty of recessions. They've weathered, higher inflation rates, lower inflation rates. They've worked with the Fed, working against the market, for the market. And so at the end of the day, like Nike's just going to continue to be relevant and continue to be a great brand and continue to put up impressive numbers. It's just in the short term, things aren't quite working for them. And that is something they have to deal with. I mean, even the great Apple Apple's revenues are shrinking right now. Don't let that stock price fool you. Apple's revenues are literally going down right now. So, when companies like Nike and Apple are having trouble even growing revenues, you're in a tougher economic environment in that given moment, right? That's just what we're going through. But the question is Nike screwed for the next 5-10 years? Just doesn't look like it. It looks like they're in a pretty great position over the next 5-10 years. Are they in a very tough position over the next 5-10 months? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's going to be difficult for them to hit numbers over this next 5 to 10 months, over this next 3 quarters or so, 4 quarters. But as a long-term investor, you have to look past that and you have to say, I'm getting the stock for a pretty dang cheap price, and if this stock keeps going down, I got to add shares for the next several quarters, this one, and hold my breath. If it goes down, it goes down. But, a lot of times people get too greedy with these companies and they're like, 98 is not good enough for Nike. I want an 88. I want a 78. I want a 68. And at the end of the day, great companies will command premium valuations even in bad markets. So do keep that in mind. Premium companies will command premium valuations even in a bad market. So that's just some food for thought there. So yeah, once again, I view Nike as a buy, if anything, over this next bit of time here. Let's call it the next 6 to 12 months. I'll likely be adding shares and kind of make it work that way. Appreciate everybody joining me as always. Thanks so much for being here, folks. If you enjoyed today's video, you enjoy more fundamental looks at companies, then consider applying for my private group. That will be the pinned comment down there to go ahead and apply to join us in there. I think you'll be able to learn a lot in terms of financials, looking at these companies and kind of the ways I view them and whatnot. So that's something we do in the private group all the time. I appreciate y'all joining me. Much love. Thanks for being subscribed and have a great day.